Well, hello, group. I am live. I was not sure exactly how to do this. My first time live. Maybe someone's listening, maybe not. So exciting stuff. I just wanted to come on today and talk about the Enneagram and the core childhood wounds. So, as you know, big fan of the Enneagram here, and I can't imagine not using it in my therapy practice. And I'm so excited for you guys to learn more about how to use it in yours. With the Enneagram core childhood wounds, the Enneagram is honestly the only personality assessment that I've discovered that actually looks at our core attachment wounds. And this is big stuff, especially for you PIT people out there. That would be that post induction therapy. And especially for you other individuals who are into inner child healing, all that good stuff. The Enneagram is such a complement to work you're already doing. And here's the other thing, it's like a fast track to understanding your clients, like in such a way that you actually get better client retention. So, what I've noticed in using the Enneagram with my practice is that client retention rocks and that clients feel really heard, seen, understood quickly. So, what the Enneagram will do for your practice too is it's going to speed the whole process up. What I found too with the Enneagram is it's such a complement to RLT work. So with RLT work, that's real relational life therapy work. The cool thing is you will get like a shortcut to understanding, hey, what types do what and what? And if you're doing relational work, it's really nice to know like, hey, this person's an 8. Here's where 8s typically go. They typically go 1 up. So that would be contempt for other people. And I think of it on the grid, going 1 up would be up here, contempt for other people. And generally, 8s are going to be boundaryless because they're asserters. Not all of the asserter types are boundaryless, though. But to bring this back in, I could talk about Enneagram all day, is hey, what does it mean? What does it mean to have these childhood wounds? What does it mean once you know them, etc.? So the different types have different ways that they've adapted to their world. So what you already know as a therapist or coach is that show me how your client was loved, I'll show you how they love. With the Enneagram assessment, with those 9 lenses of how we see the world, it is very much true. And with the 9 lenses too, and what I teach in my workshop and what I'll be teaching in my program, is that there is a predictable early childhood wound with any of these types. And that wound is predictable in not only its nature, but also like who it's expressed with. So sometimes it's expressed with both the mother and the father. Sometimes it's expressed primarily more with the mother. Sometimes the childhood avoidancy or detachment was with the father. And sometimes it's spiritual, like sometimes it's spiritual abuse. So the cool thing is when you really know the Enneagram inside and out, you're going to be able to make these assertions, these predictions about your clients very quickly. And why does that matter? Well, I think as a therapist, we all love to kind of get to the heart of the matter. I'm a therapist. I love to go deep with clients and I love to give them knowledge that they can keep researching. So, what I've noticed too with clients is they love the Enneagram, especially if you have a client that, what I've noticed with female eights is they love the Enneagram. It's like something that explains, like, oh, I haven't fit in my whole life. I have been too much, too loud, too fast, too assertive, and suddenly you find, wow, there's this whole other group of people that have the same thing as me. And it's driven from a core childhood wound. And what you see, what's really cool about this when you get into the wounding is that the core childhood wound of that 8 is specific to feeling like not protected and to feeling, in fact, like they had to protect possibly the caregiver. So, what I've seen with quite a few aides is they have protected somebody else in the family at their own expense. So, aides come across gruff, they come across like all of the things, right? But there's a reason. And I think that that's really important for people to remember is that our behaviors have reasons behind them. And I love that the new way that we're understanding therapy and the new things that are out there, if you're a follower of gosh, I forgot her name now. Well, the adult chair, if you're a follower of the intuitive psychologists, all these people, they are talking about this inner child healing. And inner child healing is directly connected with the Enneagram. So if you are into it, if you like it, I want to bring the Enneagram to you, because you get to use these same tools. It's not a secret, it's not mind reading, it's not fortune telling. So it's teachable, which I think is so cool. If you can teach it, if you can replicate it, you can make better therapists out of all of us, right? So, what do you guys want to know about the core childhood wounds? That's what I want to know. I think we have a couple of people watching today. If you have questions, shoot them out here. I'll answer them to the best of my ability. I saw a question earlier today from someone about wanting to explore your type. Hey, you should totally come to the workshop. You get access to our small group when you join the workshop, and I will work with you. I will work with you on finding that type because I want you to know your type so you can start your process of understanding the Enneagram better and hopefully bringing it to your practice. Again, guys, this I will stand behind it is the best personality assessment out there. It is by far kind of the mind reading personality assessment. You might have heard Chris Hewarts. He was on Brene Brown. He talked to her. Brene Brown's an Enneagram 1. So if you're a big Brene Brown fan, she loves it. I love it. And you can't go wrong with it. Let me just check and see if we have any questions here on our live video. No questions, guys, but if you have them, shoot them my way. I'll just probably talk a little bit about a couple of the numbers and those core attachment wounds. So when I think about attachment wounds too, being that I come from like Gestalt, I come from kind of this Enneagram background, but also this background of post-induction therapy. So I have these two going on and transactional analysis. So before I ever even learned post-induction therapy, which is Pia Melody out of the Meadows. I trained with Brenda Schaefer, and she is just an amazing woman. I learned so much stuff about sexual addiction, love addiction, which I think is finally making it to the market on a larger scale, and I learned about the Enneagram. So I was just really fortunate that from the beginning, I have incorporated this into my therapy. And I want you to be able to incorporate it with your clients too. What does this mean? Leslie, you're off topic. Get back on topic. That's what I'm telling myself. Get back on topic. Is that these early attachment wounds are expressed differently through each type. Not only is the expression different, but the wound itself is different. And with most of the types, we can predict the early wound. Now, the early wound, why would we want to look at an attachment wound? Because how we attached early is just kind of seen in everything we do. It's seen in how we work with our clients, it's seen in how we connect with our spouses and how we parent with our children and how we work with our coworkers. So none of us escape emotional interaction. You may think that you use that thinking brain first, but what studies tell us is that no, actually, we use emotion way before we ever use thinking. So the Enneagram is a way for you to understand, like, hey, these different types have different emotions on board and different things on board that you don't actually have to do 5 sessions to get to. You can usually get to them once you learn the Enneagram and you learn, I believe my typing process is the best. Once you learn my typing process, which will be offered in our program, you can bring it to your practice and you can start integrating these shortcuts with your clients and integrating really effective. I can't stress it enough, interventions. Again, with couples work, with individual work, with all of that good stuff. The core childhood wound, I think it's kind of fun. Let's just start with one. So ones, as we've talked about on our webpage, as we've started to see maybe in our own exploration, ones are generally called the perfectionist, but I like to think of them as the perfector. So the one, unlike any of the other types, has this ability to kind of make everything better. So when you think about the one and you think about like, hey, how do they do one up? The one does one up by there is a right way to do things and they know how. So when I think about ones, a lot of times in therapy, we are not going straight at that because ones would generally have a shame attack. If you went straight for the perfectionist, we kind of come around the back door with it and we start talking about, like, hey, what do you think is shaping this for you? What do you think this is doing for you? Where do you think this came from? Well, what we understand with the Enneagram is that ones, they have this missing childhood message of it's not okay to make mistakes, right? So they have this subconscious childhood message that if I make a mistake, I am bad. Not like I made a mistake, but I am bad. So to even admit a mistake is to go one down in a one's world. So if you're a Terry Real fan or even a Pitt fan, you know what that means. Going one down means you have contempt for self and you move out of relational behavior. When you move out of relational behavior, you can't connect with others. So, ones, the way that the one usually experienced the early childhood wound was a disconnection from the protective figure. Now, it could have been the mom, could have been the dad, it could actually have been like a spiritual figure as well. So sometimes with ones, it might have been the introduction of religion into their world and the way that they perceived a power greater than themselves. Um, with the disconnection, if it was a protective figure such as mom or dad, the disconnection might have happened because the parent was struggling with like a misery stabilizer, which means they were struggling with maybe an addiction. Maybe they were struggling with workaholism. Maybe they were struggling with abusive behavior, and maybe they were absent. So it could be neglect. Now, here with the one, we don't always know what the disconnection was. And that's where you start asking and questioning the client once you know the type of, like, hey, tell me more about your relationship with mom and dad. Or you could even do, if you are a family therapist, you could do a genogram. If you're a coach, it'd probably be similar to what you're already doing to find out, like, hey, how did you learn how to do this, or how did you learn how to do this? When you start asking some of those probing questions, you will definitely get a view into the world that person grew up in. And what we know too is the early imprints last the longest. So what you learned as a kid is stronger than what you're learning today, because it's almost like, well, that's the way that the neural pathway was originally formed. That's the way the neural pathway was originally built. And what we'll do once that original imprint's put down is we'll find information that either supports it, proves it correct, or we'll find information that doesn't support it as like untrue. We'll just kind of push that away. We're actually seeing that on a very vast scale with just the division in our country right now. Doesn't matter what information comes to you, it's just getting filtered in one neural pathway or another. So for ones, they do have some of that black and white thinking as a result of that early childhood wound. And the way that they overcompensated, or the overworked muscle, was to become so critical of themselves. So the way that I know I'm with a one is, as an eight, we've just always been the bad boys and girls of the Enneagram, and ones are not. Like, they're pretty perfect. So there's usually this feeling of like their poop doesn't smell. I don't know how to say that better, but ones, and here's the thing, it really kind of doesn't. They probably look at, sorry, I just saw this from Stephanie. What is the core attachment? When you think about attachment, if you go back and you read about Bowlby, like Bowlby, I think it is, attachment theory is about how we attached to the caregiver in our world, Stephanie. So when I think about that caregiver, it's usually, but not always, the mother. Was it either an insecure attachment? Was it a avoidant attachment, or was it a secure attachment? So when we look at attachment styles, there's usually 3 to 4 that people are looking at, and it can be like a chaotic attachment as well. So that's what I'm talking about when I talk about the core attachment wound. So disconnected would be that the one felt in a way rejected by the core attachment figure as a result of different behaviors. Steph, if that didn't answer your question, go ahead and write another one. Okay. We'll go back to the ones. So ones became very critical of themselves to be able to overcompensate for a belief that they're not enough. And as soon as a one feels like they're making a mistake, they feel not enough. It's really quick. You can almost see it in the eyes. You somatic therapists out there, you could tell this in such a more nuanced way than me, but you'll see a shift in the physical demeanor of a one if you start to get close to the core wound of I'm not enough and I can't make mistakes. What I've seen with ones is gentle, gentle, gentle. Work on the issue too with ones of, when I think about what you need to work on with ones, it's that core issue of worth. So for ones to know they are worthy in the face of making mistakes. So that's just a little bit about that core wounding of the one. The overworked muscle, or like when I think about the Enneagram types, when the muscle is overworked, that's when you see the negative side. But each type has a gift. And that gift of the one is really like they do know how to make things good. They do know how to make things perfect. They know how to make things better. And it's such a gift. And I'm so thankful we have ones out there with us to make our world a better place. Ones too, a lot of the times they run quite ethical, which is good as well because they'll really look at like what is right and what is wrong. And I think we need that. We probably need a little bit more of that in our world right now because to think about what's ethically right and how we need to treat everyone, everyone in our world is really important. And so ones a lot of times too will definitely back up a cause. They'll go to bat for that cause and show up, suit up and show up. So it's really cool. I love me some ones. So core wound, the core wound. When you think about core wound, think, okay, what happened to them when they were a kid? And when you look at each of the nine types, they each have an adjacent core wound. The core wound of Enneagram 2 is sacrificing self for other. So they will give up of their own needs for the needs of somebody else. That's how they feel lovable. The message that the two got subconsciously in childhood was it's not okay to have your own needs. And with some of these core messages, this is how you can begin to start typing with clients is when you think like, yeah, I think I have a two here, you can try out some of those core messages and see what sticks, what resonates with your client, because whatever resonates is usually going to be where their type is lying. So I hope that this wasn't too discombobulated. If you guys give me any more feedback on here, if you have any other questions, I'll stick around and answer a couple. Otherwise, I am gonna get out of here. I'm gonna leave, but I wanted to remind you, we will have our workshop coming up on November 21st, and that workshop is gonna run from 9 to noon. And my goal would be to do the mini Enneagram session at 8:30 so people can tune in for the winner of our entry. Again, to enter in that mini session, you would need to purchase the workshop. So I will only draw names from people who purchased the workshop. And then at the end, from noon to 1, we will do Q&A. If you're like, hey, I'm really new to the Enneagram, what I would say is like, go back, look at the posts of the different types and start to listen to the earlier podcasts about the types so you can get to know them a little bit better. Coming in with some of that knowledge will really help you. But what I'll do with the workshop too is it's interactive. So I'm going to have you start identifying with your own clients, with family members, with people in your life what types you might encounter most frequently. Because who's in our life a lot of times too can help us start to type ourselves. Great. Well, that's all I got, guys. If you have any other questions, I'll stay on for another couple of seconds here and answer them. Otherwise, it was great to see you. I hope to see all of you at this workshop. I am so excited. My first time doing it virtually. I had done it previously with therapists in person, and we had an awesome time. And I think we could still make it awesome. So I hope you're having a great day, and I hope you get to know the Enneagram and love it as much as I do. Thanks, and have a good afternoon.